There's not a chance in hell that this is funny or gonna work. And when you see those flat, corny, late-night monologue jokes with no audience, Colbert, there's Jimmy Kimmel, there's Fallon. What they're doing is just like reading off of a teleprompter. So a bunch of really good joke writers wrote them some stuff, and then they're playing to the audience, and the audience is like laughing, so they get this feedback, and they know how to do that. They stand there, and there's applause signs. And then there's producers. There's the warm-up guy that's literally telling people to clap. They're like, okay, explaining to the people, okay, when Jimmy comes out, I want a big round of applause. Let's practice this.
Imagine waking up to the chaos of Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson teaming up for the most unexpected partnership, and their first target? Jimmy Kimmel. No heads up, no hesitation, just a full-blown verbal ambush. Kimmel tried to fire back, but it felt like showing up to a gunfight with a party horn. What began as standard late-night jabs quickly turned into a two-man wrecking crew dismantling Hollywood's golden boy. This isn't just a feud, it's a full-throttle comedic demolition. Derby, buckle up and pass the popcorn.
People live with him. Like, Jimmy Kimmel is a talented guy, and I don't think he's like an evil person or something, but he's made this deal where he just serves power and attacks anybody who challenges power. Like, how can... Honestly, how can he look in the mirror and say, I'm doing something honorable? Like, how can he live with himself? How can his wife sleep with him? Well,
Joe Rogan wears many hats. Stand-up comedian, jiu-jitsu preacher, psychedelic explorer, and the voice of UFC chaos. But more than anything, he's the unofficial spokesman for everyone fed up with mainstream narratives. And when he sets his sights on late-night TV's easiest target, things spiral fast and loud.
This is why so much of comedy is not funny today. It's my chief criticism of like late night comedy, which I find unwatchable. I think it's totally unwatchable.
But also contemptible. I mean, they're collaborators.
They're just like the fact checkers. They're guardians.
There's something oddly poetic about it. The most unfiltered voice in podcasting, steamrolling one of TV's most over-polished personalities. Jimmy Kimmel, a guy who used to sling edgy jokes from a couch that probably smelled like beer, now hosts what feels more like emotional support hour under carefully staged lighting. Meanwhile, Joe Rogan's somewhere on a mic, probably shirtless, laughing at elite hypocrisy and poking holes in the cult of celebrity sainthood.
To obscurity, nobody's going to care anymore. It's like you're seeing it take place with late night television. Nobody gives a fuck about it anymore.
I know.
And it's slowly, you have a bad business model and you're not adapting.
Yeah, the creativity's gone for late night comedy, right? Like, that's not really a thing.
So when Kimmel decided to climb onto his metaphorical soapbox, stacked high with cancel culture buzzwords and performative virtue, Joe Rogan didn't blink before hurling a verbal dumbbell straight through the base. It was never going to be a fair fight. Rogan, fueled by caffeine, DMT flashbacks, and an army of garage gym Kyles, tore into the late-night illusion without an ounce of restraint. It wasn't gentle, it wasn't subtle, it was like taking a kettlebell to the face in surround sound.
It'd be one thing if his job wasn't to be a comedian and to do that, but his job is to be he's supposed to be funny. And comedians are supposed to hold people in positions of power accountable. Yeah.
The people in charge.
Exactly.
He's their Praetorian Guard.
Yeah.
And it's like the self-hatred he must feel, because he wasn't always, that's my point. Yeah. I mean, Colbert has always been a hard partisan, talented guy, but obviously he's not a comedian. But Kimmel was a comedian. Like, how does he, I don't understand.
I don't know
how he can...
Rogan has a sixth sense for fake sentiment. He spots inauthenticity like it owes him rent. And modern-day Jimmy Kimmel, he's basically the poster child for performative clapping and prepackaged moral takes. Once a lovable jester, he's now a self-appointed preacher soaked in applause cues and recycled think pieces. Rogan didn't have to shout, he just pointed out the obvious. Somewhere along the way, Kimmel stopped telling jokes and started delivering Hallmark card monologues. From behind a teleprompter. And for Rogan, that's comedy blasphemy. Joe lives in a world where the punchline is sacred. Raw, real, and never followed by a tearful PSA. That's not stand-up, that's stand down. But Rogan didn't stop at criticizing the style. He went for the whole act. The illusion that Kimmel can mock everyday folks 1 minute and pretend to champion them the next. That he can swim in Hollywood privilege while claiming to be just another average guy. Rogan picked that narrative apart like a fighter dismantling a flimsy prop opponent, slowly, methodically, and with just the right amount of smug satisfaction. And while Joe brought the knockout punches, across the map, Tucker Carlson was calmly straightening his tie and taking aim. Where Rogan swung hard, Tucker went precision mode, quiet, controlled, and somehow even more lethal.
He might buy into the narrative to the extent that he thinks it's morally wrong to joke about these certain topics.
But it's not just that. He's like pouring hot oil on the peasants from the parapet. Like he's hurting anyone who challenges the king. It's crazy.
It is crazy. It's upside down. The comedians should be poking holes in the popular narrative, not propagating.
Jimmy Kimmel is. Like, truly. No, I mean it.
You
It's
said
like,
it,
no
not
amount
me.
of money is worth what he's doing.
Tucker doesn't need to shout or curse to land a blow. His style is pure precision, a smirk, a raised eyebrow, and a velvet-glove jab straight to the gut. So when Jimmy Kimmel waded into politics dressed up as comedy, Tucker didn't just critique it, he dissected it on air like it was a high school science project gone wrong. Kimmel, once the guy who made fun of red carpets and reality shows, suddenly wanted to moonlight as Hollywood's conscience. And Tucker, he wasn't buying it for a second. In his world, you don't get to cash in on punchlines and then act offended when people expect, jokes. He didn't see Kimmel as a comic anymore. He saw him as a failed pundit, awkwardly playing dress-up as Jon Stewart, just with worse jokes and an overactive applause sign. Tucker wasn't angry. He never is. His weapon of choice is disbelief. That quiet, biting kind of sarcasm that says, "Really? This guy?" He calmly pointed out how Kimmel had transformed from late-night class clown to self-righteous hall monitor, and that alone was enough to make the entire spectacle feel like the real joke.
In that case, you think that's him or a writer? Can't you tell?
Jimmy Kimmel? No, it's him, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
good. That's a good one.
He's a comic.
That's a good one.
I mean, he used to host The Man Show. I mean, he's done some pretty outrageous shit back in the day.
Yeah.
For hee-hees and haw-haws.
No, that's a good joke on top of a good joke.
Yeah, it's a good joke. Funny thing to say. He's had a real problem with Elon from the beginning of this thing, but it's like he's in this leftist thought bubble.
Uh-huh.
He is in the most leftist thought bubble available, which is...
And that's when it all truly unraveled. Because the more Kimmel tried to project gravitas, the more ridiculous he looked through Tucker's lens. Here was a comedian who'd seemingly forgotten how to be funny, swapping punchlines for politically correct theater. It was like watching a magician who couldn't remember the trick, so he just started lecturing the crowd. While Rogan rolled his eyes at the Hollywood echo chamber, Tucker was delivering a cool, surgical takedown on the death of comedy. One questioned Jimmy's cultural relevance, the other his sincerity. And together, without planning or coordination, they turned him into a walking case study of what happens when comics start taking themselves too seriously. That's the kicker. This wasn't a tag team attack. These were two voices from opposite corners of the ideological map who both looked at Kimmel and said, "What happened to this guy?" Rogan came at him from the gritty, no-filter underground. Tucker delivered from his polished media perch. And poor Jimmy, he was caught in the middle like a deer in the headlights, one ranting about elk meat and authenticity, the other calmly dismantling his persona with historical references and dry wit. Rogan mocked the fall from edgy and unapologetic to sanitized and sentimental. The guy who once pushed boundaries now cries on cue and delivers jokes vetted by a PR team.
Even the quote comedians, they were on propaganda duty too. Watch this.
He's also pushing U.S. intelligence to find evidence for this theory that the virus was accidentally released from a lab in Wuhan. That's his new angle to feed the wingnuts, to treat this virus like it was a conspiracy of some kind.
It should have never happened. This plague should never have happened. It could have been stopped. But people chose not to stop it.
What people? Tomorrow he'll blame the Spanish flu on Antonio Banderas.
Yeah. Imagine if you're a comedian and all of a sudden your cue card has all kinds of talking points from politicians and foreign governments on it. Don't read it. You degrade yourself and you become complicit in the greatest crime.
Tucker, meanwhile, didn't just call Jimmy Kimmel unfunny, he went for the foundation. To him, Kimmel had morphed into a mouthpiece for the elite, a former satirist turned studio preacher who mistook applause for bravery and saw echo chamber approval as a badge of honor. While Jimmy soaked in the validation from his clapping audience, he never saw the roast coming. And when it landed, it hit like a silent Tesla on full throttle, swift, smug, and utterly devastating. The funniest part? Kimmel didn't even respond. He couldn't. You don't clap back at Rogan's dry teardown or Tucker's surgical mockery. You just hope the algorithm buries it. fans tried to spin it the usual way. He's evolved, he's courageous, he's telling hard truths. But when both Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson, who agree on almost nothing, both call you a parody of your former self, it's no longer critique. It's a full-on bipartisan reality check. Let's be real. Rogan skewered the shift, the way Kimmel went from fearless comic to a guy who looks like he runs every joke through a legal team. The punchlines now come with disclaimers, the laughter sounds rehearsed, and the raw honesty, gone. Rogan's rule of comedy is simple. Hit hard, hit real, and hit everyone. But Kimmel swapped the punch for a polite prod, and that's not comedy, that's corporate messaging in a laugh track suit.
That sort of self-censorship and the idea of being a more empathetic person is a good thing, right? But as long as it's reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, the problem with that kind of stuff is it continues to go in the same direction where more and more things become forbidden and toxic.
Meanwhile, Tucker Carlson came in with the precision of a cultural surgeon, dissecting what he called the Kimmel effect as a sign of something much bigger, the erosion of authenticity, the hijacking of comedy by politics, and the ultimate, cardinal sin, being boring. To Tucker, boredom isn't just dull, it's unforgivable. And Jimmy, in his current state, is less a comedian and more a motivational speaker in late-night drag. Together, Rogan and Carlson didn't just roast Kimmel, they buried a version of him that people once actually liked. The old Jimmy, the guy who found humor in chaos, who roasted everyone equally, that guy's long gone. In his place stands a sanitized host reading punchlines off a teleprompter like they're policy statements, wearing the faded shell of who he used to be like, a hotel bathrobe with a logo. And here's the twist, it wasn't even a loud takedown. Neither Rogan nor Tucker raised their voice. They just held up mirrors. Joe's mirror was cracked and covered in protein shake stains, but it reflected the raw truth. Tucker's was polished and cold, showing every smug inconsistency in high def. What stared back wasn't funny, it was sad. This wasn't mockery for mockery's sake. It was two men, ideologically worlds apart, landing on the same undeniable reality. Jimmy Kimmel became the punchline to a joke he used to tell. And the saddest part? He probably thinks he's still crushing it. Because in the Kimmel bubble, the applause never stops. They clap when the joke hits. They clap when it flops. They clap when he mumbles through ghostwritten sermons on justice. The clapping is constant. It's hollow. It's expected. It's the soundtrack to selling out.
Jimmy Kimmel made a tweet back to him. He said, "Your pronouns are ass and hole." Which is pretty funny. But then,
Did he really?
Yes. And so then I read that, and there was people saying, "Please don't joke about pronouns. It's transphobic to joke about pronouns." So they were chiding him for participating in a joke about pronouns.
So Jimmy Kimmel was doing it. He was doing it too.
Yeah, he was doing it too.
No, he was being accused of joking about it too.
Yes. So they were upset at him, even though he was attacking the appropriate person. He was doing it in a manner which is also construed as being trans.
ChatGPT said, but Joe Rogan's audience doesn't clap. They question, rewind, debate, and dismantle. They don't fall for the performance. And Tucker Carlson's audience? They collect receipts, wait silently, and then deliver the takedown, with bullet points and historical references. So, what happens when two of the most opinionated voices in media both decide to lift the veil on Jimmy Kimmel? You get the slow, public unraveling of a once great comedian, laughed out of relevance by the very crowd he once dismissed. Rogan wasn't out for political points, he just wanted something real. And right now, Kimmel's about as authentic as a meatless nugget in a filtered recipe reel. Tucker didn't care about jokes, he cared about the hypocrisy of preaching virtue while lounging in privilege. Watching Kimmel play America's moral compass with a mug of herbal tea in hand was the last straw. There was no dramatic fall, no canceled headlines, no viral meltdown, just two giants stepping back from the wreckage of a man who lost his edge and replaced it with applause cues. Jimmy Kimmel didn't get silenced. He didn't get blocked. He got laughed off the stage.
The job description of a comedian is not so different from the job description of a journalist, as traditionally constituted. Tell the truth about the powerful. Comedians are usually a lot smarter, more clever, and incisive than journalists, but that's what they're supposed to be doing. Almost none still do. Adam Carolla is one of the very few remaining comedians in the United States.
For a comedian, there's no harsher downfall than becoming the punchline yourself, when no one's laughing with you anymore, just at you. That's not just a career dip, it's exile from comedy itself. Joe Rogan, unfazed, probably just chuckled and got back to swapping elk meat stories and alien theories with a Navy SEAL amped on creatine. But the cultural impact hit hard. Kimmel, unintentionally, had become the poster boy for everything broken in late-night TV. Overproduced, underfunny, and bloated with self-importance. Meanwhile, Rogan was rewriting the rules of media influence from a bunker-like studio that resembled a tactical sauna, reaching more people than any polished network host ever could. And it wasn't just Rogan's tribe paying attention, the shift was felt across the board. Kimmel wasn't provocative anymore, he was processed, bland, corporate safe, like someone took Jon Stewart, put him in eco-friendly packaging, and told him to grin through the mediocrity. Rogan's takedown wasn't just personal, it was a cultural wake-up call, a reminder that true comedy doesn't need a permission slip. Then there was Tucker Carlson, delivering his dismantling with slow, surgical precision. While Joe flung kettlebells of sarcasm, Tucker conducted a cold dissection, not just of Kimmel, but of the sanitized, self-congratulatory comedy industry he now embodied. To Tucker, Kimmel wasn't just past his prime, he was the nightly obituary. For authenticity, beamed out to a dwindling audience still pretending they get the joke.
Nothing.
I agree. Wait until you hear about this guy named Tucker Carlson. You are gonna hate him.
The undeniably big topics, the ones that will define our future, get virtually no discussion at all. War, civil liberties, emerging science, demographic change, corporate power, natural resources.
Right. The big topics, the important subjects like these.
Well, it turns out leprechauns exist not just on cereal boxes. There are a lot of people who believe they have seen a leprechaun. Now it faces an even more profound threat. Zombie raccoons. Honestly, how much emotional support does a snake provide?
ChatGPT said he didn't even have to try, just highlighted the absurdity of a man who once mocked celebrities now playing their emotional support pet. And somehow, despite standing on opposite ends of the ideological universe, Rogan and Carlson landed on the same truth. Jimmy Kimmel isn't dangerous, funny, or relevant anymore. He's a TED Talk in clown shoes. Honestly, that's almost impressive, becoming the one guy that two media titans who can't agree on anything except maybe hating cardio both take aim at. One speaks to gym rats and open-minded skeptics, the other caters to people who alphabetize conspiracy theories. And yet both watched Kimmel's preachy monologues and thought, this is what passes for satire now? That's the irony. Jimmy Kimmel, once the king of irony, can't even recognize his own anymore. The man who built a brand on laughing at the powerful now hugs them with trembling sincerity. Tears prepped for camera, arms open like a motivational speaker in mid-crisis. The jester became the sermonizer. The one who once delivered the roast has become the roast. And no one even needed to raise their voice to point it out. Rogan smirked. Carlson dissected. The result? Total demolition. Not with a scandal, not. With a blow-up, but with a slow, precise unthreading of everything Kimmel used to stand for. The tragedy? He didn't even realize it happened.